All right, we're moments away now from what could be a pretty interesting exchange. The first time, first of all, we'll hear from President Trump maybe reacting to some of these stories that have developed with his son and what he knew and what he said to the Russian entity who was in this country back a little bit more than a year ago. All of this will be part of a joint press conference he's having with his French counterpart, Emmanuel Macron. What makes this interesting to me is this is a new alliance. Now, whether you say the president, our president, stumbled into this or not, it is a way to sort of checkmate whatever Angela Merkel is saying in Germany. She's not a fan of his, and we're told that he shares that view of her. But these two have hit it off after what was a pretty tense kind of a pairing. The fourth time they've met in almost as many weeks. The former Green Beret Commander Lt. Colonel Michael Waltz is with us, and Nile Gardiner, a former aide to Margaret Thatcher. So, Nile, I ended with you. You know, we're so used to that Anglo-American connection and camaraderie that maybe this is the one that's going to be the case during the Trump years. What do you think?
Neil, I wouldn't read too much into this meeting. Certainly, smart move by Emmanuel Macron inviting President Trump over to Paris for Bastille Day and bilateral discussions today. But the reality is that Donald Trump and Emmanuel Macron are oceans apart when it comes to a lot of policy ideas. And in terms of overall ideology and vision, there are huge differences between the two leaders. Macron really is a sort of open borders, supranationalist, someone who is not a big supporter of national sovereignty. Donald Trump is all about advancing robust U.S. national interests. He's a big supporter of sovereignty and self-determination. Donald Trump is a big backer of Brexit. Emmanuel Macron is a self-styled sort of enemy of Brexit. And so I think you do have, a gulf of differences between the two leaders. But undoubtedly there will be, of course, cooperation in terms of counterterrorism, fighting the broader Islamist threat, and also with regard to the war in Iraq and Syria.
Yeah, all right, outside of all those things, Niall, I think I'm still right. But I'm kidding. But, Commander, one of the things I noticed in this relationship is how it has improved a little bit from what it was, and it wouldn't take much to improve it with the whole handshake thing and everything else. But we do have a common theme when it comes to Syria, dealing with terrorists. Yep. And obviously, France has been hit quite a bit in terrorist attacks, so it is that kind of common bond. And President Trump could have refused this invite to attend these Bastille Day events. He had just been in Europe last week, and he didn't. What do you think is, calculate what his calculation was and what Macron's calculation is?
Well, from Macron's standpoint, look, I think he's clearly starting to position himself to be the go-to guy for the Americans, particularly in the wake of the bad relationship with Merkel and to position himself kind of ahead of the UK. And I think it's very smart to invite Trump to Bastille Day, where you have very large military-style parades, an air show. I mean, there's this kind of thinking that those are things that President Trump will identify with. And look, despite their differences, there's some real operational realities to the relationship. There's extensive counterterrorism cooperation in West Africa and Libya and Niger and Mali. Of course, France is a NATO ally. They are a nuclear power. They have a permanent seat on the UN. And then, as you mentioned, there's a long history with the French in the Levant, in Syria and Lebanon and Iraq, where we can have a lot of coordination. And then there's a broader intelligence sharing. So despite some personal differences and viewpoints on where we're going in the world, there are some very, what I call, kind of operational realities of the relationship that are good to work out and have worked out between the two commander-in-chiefs.
Now, when I watch something like these exchanges and watch leaders, you always try to read body language. I'm horrible at it here, but one of the things I do wonder is what brings leaders together, even those of dramatically different stripes. There's a point I'll raise with the Colonel as well, this idea that Ronald Reagan and Gorbachev developed quite a remarkable alliance and simpatico after a rough start. I could go all the way back to, ironically, Kennedy and Khrushchev, but there is a history of getting along with those you didn't think you would get along. Now, I know these are allies. It's a little bit different case here. But what do you make of that?
Yeah, those are very interesting points. And clearly both, Trump and Macron led sort of populist revolutions in the United States and France. And certainly both figures emerged from way behind the pack in terms of the political candidates to become their respective presidents, and both secured victories against all the odds, frankly, to become the leaders of their countries. But I don't think that you can in any way compare France as an ally, for example, with Great Britain, for example. I do think the French really are a sort of fair weather friend.
I think you're a little jealous. I think you're a little jealous, Niall. I think what you're seeing what's going on here, you're a little upset, and I can understand that.
No, it's just the reality. It's just the reality, Neil. And of course, the French sort of aspire to have some sort of special relationship with America, but they'll never have one, of course. Neil.
All right. There you go.
But a lot of pomp and ceremony this week, which is always very nice.
Indeed. Colonel, we talk about the changing landscape in Europe, and we talk about the fact that the Europeans claim the Americans are not providing the adequate leadership. So Angela Merkel has assumed that role, I guess, in dealing with Vladimir Putin, famously challenging him, rolling her eyes at things he's saying. What is happening out there, and what are we to make of that?
Well, one of the things we have to think about is, I think a number of leaders have pressed the Europeans, particularly when it comes to NATO, to step up and pay for their own collective defense. France is not at that 2% mark, but they are getting close. But one of the things we have to accept is, as we say, look, you need to take more on your own, then there's going to be kind of this jostling of who's the first among equals if America's not. And that's just, with us having such a burden also comes a lot of leverage on where we want NATO to go as an alliance and what we want it to focus on. So that's just kind of the give and take that I think you're going to see as, I don't call it a pulling back, but as we're encouraging all of them to step up militarily. And, these disagreements we've had with the French, whether it's on trade or other issues, isn't the first time. You remember they famously would not back us in the Iraq War, so they did in a significant way in Afghanistan. We've had our differences before, but I think the fundamentals of the relationship are sound. Of course, they won't be the same as our relationship with the Brits and the UK. But it is a strong relationship.
You and Gardiner are right in simpatico with each other.
But it is a strong one that I'm glad to see the president's over there nurturing. It's important.
Guys, I want to thank you both. Good sports as well.